Welcome back to the Logic of AI Magic. In this episode, I sit down with JL, co-founder and CTO of Salesbricks, to explore how modern revenue teams are being rebuilt from the ground up. JL is a seasoned technology leader and entrepreneur, currently serving as the CTO at Salesbricks, a SaaS company focused on sales operations and workflow solutions. We dive into the engineering side of AI-powered sales infrastructure, what breaks when automation scales, and how companies can design systems that are both intelligent and trustworthy. JL, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Vinny.
So JL, tell us a little about what your role is at Salesbricks and what is Salesbricks about in today's world of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the co-founder CTO. We started Salesbricks about 4 years ago with my co-founder, John. John and my wife had worked together at a bunch of companies, so previously A16Z companies and lithium technologies, and they'd kind of gone through the process of building billing, having to implement CPQ, just running the whole sales operations, deal desk, quote to cash system. And one thing that always kind of bugged them and I think everyone else who's been in this situation is just how awful buying software is on a B2B level. For some reason, like you and I go to Amazon, we know exactly what we're going to find. We go and we click, two buttons or tap on the phone, and we get it immediately. And the experience is like super streamlined. And our expectation is that for everyone. That's why Shopify exists these days. It's basically that for everybody. But somehow, when we go to buy B2B software, it's incredibly painful to literally give people money. Like, I want to buy your products. Yes, okay, cool. John had this experience buying. I can't remember what the product was, but it was like the third time he'd bought it. The third time he was going to be a customer of the company, and they were still like, okay, cool. Maybe we'll send you an order form next week. And that for him was like a big a big moment of realization that the whole system was just not going to get any better. SaaS, like so much of SaaS has improved. Our our operations have improved. The way that we monitor our applications has improved. The way we collect data has improved. But somehow, like, the sales motion was just like massively buyer hostile. So these days, anytime you sell software, there's kind of like pricing, packaging, quoting, redlining. Then you get the actual deal you have to sign, the actual kind of like checkout experience to the extent that there is one, invoicing, billing, and all of that is just like fragmented. And that's from both the buyer and the seller's perspective. And Salesbricks just kind of unifies that all into one seamless experience. So it's a bit like an Amazon B2B checkout. So that's the way we kind of think of it. And Salesbricks is powering some very fast-moving companies.
So why is that? So basically, you're saying that, I mean, I see that all the time. Like, if I go to a SaaS company's website, some of them don't even have a pricing page. The ones that do will say, here's the small, medium, large, and contact sales, right? If I go to Amazon and I see a nice toy to buy and it says contact sales, I'm not going to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, but obviously there must be a reason behind it. Like, while you're solving that problem, and it's a good problem to solve, but technology already existed, people know how to just put a price on the website and put a button and I can click and buy. So there must be a core reason behind it. To educate us on, like, what have you seen as the primary reason for hiding the pricing and making it somewhat difficult?
Yeah, so the primary reason is that I said it in a very blasé and simplified manner about like how easy it is to buy stuff in B2C, right? The argument from B2B has always been like, well, it's not that simple, right? Your pricing and packaging is gonna have to change, because the idea, you just think of like your Bayesian prior, like what are the chances that you nailed your pricing the first time around, right? Especially as a startup, you don't have like 5 people who can go and do market research. You're just you and maybe 3 other people. So the chances that you got your pricing and packaging right from the start is basically zero. Every time you change your pricing and packaging, you have to go and make alterations to all of your agreements. You have to create a new document. Your terms and conditions might not actually match. You also just might not know what you're selling. I know this sounds a bit silly because both of us are working at companies where, reasonably well established. We've got fairly understandable product roadmaps, ICPs, product market fit. But in those early days, you don't know what on earth you are actually, providing. And I see a lot of companies who come on board, and some of their first customers have sold something completely different than what they're actually now selling today. And if you imagine that every time you wanted to change like what you were selling, how you were selling it, what the pricing would be, what the terms and conditions are, you have to essentially push code, or you have to change documents internally, or you have to like change your processes. You can start to see like why it's complicated and why companies are like, no, just, we'll just have a contact me form here because we want to actually have an opportunity to be flexible. We want to be able to be agile. And the reality is that a lot of pricing and packaging kind of veered between extreme agility, which is what companies with no software, no process, and kind of no idea, which is a normal thing for every startup, deal with. And then what's normally in the market, which is like these massive tools made for Fortune 500 companies to support 50 different price book variations and a billion different SKUs. So between those two, there's always a way to either like shoot yourself in the foot, but have a lot of agility, or not be able to adjust rapidly and to actually do the stuff that you need to do as a startup Series A, Series B company. And that's sort of the problem. It's like we can complain about it, but the reality is the tooling just didn't exist for it.
And how about something I see that's neither here nor there? Meaning, today, a lot of customers and a lot of even I sometimes feel that the price of a token is well known. Like if I'm looking at any platform out there, this is the price of 1 million tokens, but I don't know how many I need. I like just 6 months ago, I was looking at, here is a picture, and I want an LLM, a multimodal model, to look at the picture and give me an answer. So how many tokens is a picture? It was documented on the ChatGPT website, and now I see it's like even that's disappearing, and nobody talks about these things properly. It's becoming like, yeah, while you have told me what the price is of a token, but you're not telling me how much is in my control. In fact, I talk to an LLM, it might give me a terse answer, or it could decide to spew a lot. It's not in my control. So that's the other thing I'm noticing, where it's very hard for a consumer to actually figure out at the end of the month, how much will I be paying for it? Are you guys also helping in those scenarios?
It's actually funny you said that, Vinny, because yes, a big part of what we kind of end up doing for our customers is also providing a sounding board for kind of pricing and packaging and questions like that. Because the reality is our team has a lot of experience in that area. John, my co-founder, has touched billions of dollars of revenue at big A16Z exited startups, and the reality is that it's not easy, right? Working out exactly how you're going to pricing packaging, how you're going to explain your value to a seller, to a buyer, and then to be able to express that in commercial terms and know that, okay, once this deal is done, they're on that contract, and we know that they have to be represented that way as they grow, throughout the entire life cycle of their contract, which may be different from what customers who buy your product 6 months later have to deal with. It's tough. Like, it's never been easy. And the funny thing about Salesbricks is, as we've kind of lived and matured as a company and got to where we are now, we've seen a lot of different changes in the SaaS marketplace. We started off being like, hey, just having like straightforward seats is kind of revolutionary. People aren't selling this way. They should be selling this way. Into okay, usage, like straight usage needs to be understood and applied. Into usage with the credit-based model, which a lot of we actually had this experience from SignalFX days, from in fact with Vongel, which is one of the companies John worked at the very, very start of his career. The idea of buying like single units of measure, but committing contracts such that your revenue recognition is strong, such that your cash flow is strong. Honestly, it's actually a bit of a nightmare if you try and work this out yourself with a spreadsheet. And that's kind of what all these companies were having to do, because they're having to pivot. And like you say, with like, what a token is, So you have this horrible situation where your customer is very aware of what the actual unit prices are. If you're going to buy a car, like, you don't go into the dealership knowing, okay, I know what the price of steel is in the specifically in the area around where the factories are for this company. I know what the cost of shipping is, so I can roughly work out what their margins are, so now I can screw them. Whereas AI companies today, every time they go into a negotiation, their buyer essentially like has a full understanding of what their what the actual raw material cost is, and they really have to sell on value. And as a result of that, when you have to look at also, like, okay, you have to demonstrate growth, you have to demonstrate strong cash flow metrics, you also have to have it such that you can recognize your revenue in a way that A, will make sense and you won't go to jail, but B, also look good for investors when you come to your next round. All of that is like incredibly complicated. So having a tool that does that for SaaS companies, especially in the AI space like today, is big. So I imagine when they see you coming and you say like, hey, I know what 1 million tokens costs, like that. What's your experience like? Have you ever brought that up in a sales conversation?
Yeah, I mean, customers know that. We take a different approach altogether. We don't charge for the tokens period, right? So yeah, so that's the other way. Like we say, look, that's not where the value is, and also it's a depreciating thing. To 1 million tokens this year, next year it'll be maybe 10 times cheaper. So why even attach your pricing model to the tokens? We talk about higher level constructs like there's a transaction in your finance or accounting end to end, and what's the value of that transaction going through in time under the SLAs that you have with high levels of accuracy, and we sell that value. We happen to use tokens today. Tomorrow we might use something different. In fact, in our platform, it's a neurosymbolic platform. So guess what? We figure out when you should use tokens and when you should use simple CPU compute. And CPU compute is far cheaper. If you do 1 plus 1 on a CPU versus on an LLM, there's it's an unbelievable difference in the amount of energy that goes in the LLM to do 1 plus 1. So we are smart about that under the hood. And in fact, it's beneficial for the customer if we don't use tokens and we use a deterministic way, because first of all, hallucinations won't happen, biases won't happen, and it will be faster. LLMs are not known to be fast. So that's what we do. Actually, we completely bypass the problem and talk about value. But that brings me to another question. You've been talking about many things, and we should cover a few areas for sure. You talked about value. How is value measured in today's world of AI, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what have you learned and what are you educating your customers?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue I think that a lot of customers that we've had and that, and the movements we've seen in the marketplace is that we're an example of this. When we started Salesbricks, John and I were extremely excited about like having the minimum number of salespeople, right? We're like, okay, salespeople, they're kind of a little bit dumb. They do the job, but can we just like replace them? Can we just like put and one of the other things with Salesbricks is like, look, it's a marketplace. You don't need to worry about the salespeople. You can go and buy the software. It's really easy. We'll just bypass all of that. But I think in the age of like, as AI ramps, there's only two groups of people and two kind of professions which are incompressible. One of them is lawyers. Like I used to be a lawyer. It's always impressive to me how lawyers will, like, no matter what, they will find a way to get paid and be part of whatever the outcome is in the end of the world. It's going to happen, right? So, but the other is salespeople, because salespeople fundamentally are representing, to an extent, they're representing an artificial intelligence, which is a company, to another human being, and that's a necessary like role. They have the ability to understand what the actual requirements are from a customer and to present and work out whether whether they're a good fit and how trusted they are. And a lot of that is value. And the funniest thing with the AI companies that have been growing very, very fast, like a lot of our customers, a lot of them are selling directly to engineers, and so there's two sides to that. The first is engineers, like we can spot the value immediately. We know, okay, this is exactly what I want. And the second thing is we don't really, we don't have that same kind of holistic appreciation of value. And those companies are the ones that take off really, really fast, right? Because engineers are very, very, very easy. There's no extra steps. The companies which are solving a real problem in other domains, that's where that communication of value is, for want of a better word, super valuable. It's an incredibly hard skill to be able to get that across, to understand the problem your customer is actually facing and how your solution solves it. So, I mean, in your case, like Kognitos is like, you guys are up, you've ascended. You understand, like, okay, this is what we're actually communicating. This is what we're providing. We're actually providing value.
Mhm.
But I think because of a lot of the growth has been in services for engineering departments or services which are very quantitative, the qualitative aspect is the area where things are really kind of falling down and where that's difficult. And I think looking at the companies who use Salesbricks, there are companies who have products in similar categories, but their approach to sales is so different, and their outcomes is so different, that I think being able to articulate and understand and express your value in a way that gets your customer to understand, like, hey, okay, I'm gonna give up some of my hard-earned cash, some of my burn rate is gonna take up to use your product because it will fix it. That is still every bit as vital as it was in the past. And
True.
a lot of companies have to kind of understand that there is this superhighway that some companies are going to be on because of the nature of what they sell and who they sell to. But for a lot of other companies, this is just like accelerated SaaS. You're still at the end of the day doing the same kind of jobs, the same kind of um, day-to-day problem solving. You're just doing it at a significantly faster pace. The world
I
hasn't
see.
completely changed.
I see. I see. You mentioned accelerated SaaS. So let me ask the big question. Is SaaS going to die? What do you think?
I fundamentally don't think so. So I like most, as I went all in on like agentic programming over a year ago now. So
Hmm.
I watched the whole thing. I managed to catch the wave at kind of the right time. I built tools for my own own purposes, working around how bad like some of the context windows were, some of the actual decision making. I learned a huge amount, and over time, my tools. I'd build a tool, and then at first it was like I'd build a tool and it would work. It would be great for like 2 months, and then one of the main agentic systems, whether it was like Ada or Claude, would pick it up and they'd implement it and be okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then that window of time where I had, my own personal tools were providing significant benefits from me that weren't available using just Claude code and some different techniques. That window just kept shrinking and shrinking until I finally said, I think in about May, I was like, okay, it's pointless now. Now, like, number one, the people who are using this software actually, people who build it are using it, so they understand all the problems. They have, they're almost telepathic in their products understanding for use, how users are thinking, what the problems are. And two, like the techniques that you built up they're still useful and applicable. So for me, agentic programming has been a significant change. So like my day-to-day as an engineer shifted, but what happened is that the cost of implementing just dropped to zero, but the cost of knowing what to do, the that story of, I think it was Edison, had someone come to inspect a boiler and to say, to fix an issue they were having. And the engineer went and took a bit of chalk and drew an X and was like, yeah, you got to put a valve right here, and left. And subsequently, Edison got the invoice and said, well, I'm not paying this because the guy just came to my factory and drew an X on a boiler tank. Like, that's, I'm not going to pay $1,000 for that. And so the guy's company came back and itemized the bill, and it said, drawing a chalk X, 2 cents, and knowing where to draw the chalk X was $999.98.
Yeah.
It's that kind of situation. Like so in that respect, as like from an engineering and product perspective, still what to build and how to build it are like extremely valuable. And then the actual like implementing it is asymptotically approaching zero, like the actual cost and value associated. But at the same time, what's the first thing that people used AI for in go-to-market? Like outreach, right? I don't know. I saw the writing on the wall in December or November of 2024,
Mhm.
and just seeing my inbox getting obliterated and thinking, well, okay, this outreach stuff is pretty much hosed at this point. There's going to be a lot of things which are tasks that are kind of painful to do as a human being, which can be automated. The ease of doing it through an LLM or through any kind of agentic system means that huge amounts more of it get done, but the value in a zero-sum game, like with advertising, what have you, drops to zero. Whereas in the SaaS market, I don't see anything that is done by a SaaS vendor as being kind of zero-sum. In the situation in which there is like an absolute, overarching kind of like agentic OS which replaces all of our computers, and we
Mhm.
have like absolute singularity living. Yeah, maybe if you have every single person has got a perfect digital representation which can do absolutely everything for them on a day-to-day basis, sure, then maybe a lot of software ends up having to be just kind of service based. But the stuff that is painful to do that adds value is incompressible. And that's what I was talking about with salespeople. I think there is a task there which you quite simply cannot entirely get rid of. In the
Yeah,
same way, like software, there are some software tasks which the person who wants the problem solved cannot necessarily articulate how they want it solved or how it ought to be solved. And in those areas, I think that's where SaaS will continue to be
I see.
just not a part of life.
So yeah, let me pose a different point of view on the couple of things you said, right? When it's sales not being compressible, what the sales folks do, and also SaaS. Today, I'm looking at my developers, right? So the way they're implementing software is first, they spend most of the time on the design aspect. And the design aspect is you're having a discussion with one of the frontier models, like, this is what I want to do, give me suggestions of what to do, and so on. But now, very recently, you've gone to a point where we just say, give it a prompt and then say planning mode. And then now there's a Claude Opus 4.6 out there. It creates a plan. And what I've noticed is people don't even read the plan. It's like I say, they just say, okay, there are 6 to 10 steps it's gonna do. I have a coffee to drink. It's like, okay, press build and then go come back, and by God, it actually works a lot of times. Now, today we do have people on staff that know what are the good practices of building systems because they have built them themselves. I mean, the more you go into the future, people actually will not know. It would be like, AI built this and we just trust AI, even for the decision making of what to build. And then see, SaaS is software as a service, and the as a service part was valuable because software was hard. I think, I mean, I have a different opinion on this one. So if building software becomes as easy as, telling, hey, I need this kind of, like, I need my own CRM, and this
Mm-hmm.
and the software says, okay, what kind do you want? Do you want like a Salesforce thing, or like, how big is your company? I say, I only have 100 people, and this is these many transactions I'll do, and I want to keep track of opportunities and leads, and I want a CPQ as well, if you can throw it in, and fries on the side. So
Mm-hmm.
and then it says, okay, I'm going to build it for you, come back after lunch. And if it works for me, would I actually have the patience of going and buying software from a SaaS vendor? Obviously, Salesbricks will help me solve that problem,
Yeah.
make it simple. But then I have to go configure that tool to my needs. And I feel right now the challenge I face whenever I'm buying SaaS tools today, somebody needs to get onboarded and trained on the SaaS tool itself and figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to configure, because that's somebody else's point of view of how that SaaS tool needs to be used. Versus if it was built in house, I can prompt it and say, no, I can't understand your menus. Can you please do this? Right? So that's my counter argument. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting points there, especially around like configuration and how you'd use it, right? I'd say there's an interesting equivalent, which is that I mean I cook Do you cook at all at home, Binny? Or
Very little, but I do understand where you're going. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So like, there's I don't necessarily I can cook a huge repertoire of stuff, providing it came from I've got Italian and Chinese
Mm,
grandparents, so like
mm.
I've got a good list of recipes. Um, to be honest, I don't really want to cook every single night. And in
True.
fact, I personally enjoy cooking, but I also enjoy coding. There's a certain part of me that will always be kind of tinkering and playing with computers. I feel like a lot of people actually don't necessarily have that for a lot of the problems they want solving. That's the first part, and the second part is CRM as a concept, or like any of these tools. Like we're talking about something we both understand. We both kind of understand the industry. We know roughly what that software does, and we could probably go quite deep on like what it needs to do and maybe how it fits together if we sat down and whiteboarded it. Um,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of problems with people just where I don't think people would know, and I suspect there's a lot of gotchas that we can't like fully understand because we haven't had the process of building that software, and we haven't made the same mistakes as those engineers who've built it before. And there's a lot more depth, but on the point of like configure, so a lot more depth I think people can necessarily prompt out for what they want. I think if software as a service is going to if there's an area where like bespoke built software has a problem, it's in very simple transactional tasks. So, I
Mm.
want to do this specific thing, like I want to book a restaurant. I'm probably not going to, find some specific software for that because I don't do that every day of my life. I do that,
Mm.
maybe once or twice a week. But if an AI agent can do that for me very, very competently, and that's once or twice, it's a fairly compact, understood problem, and I don't need it to use it every day. Um, for stuff which is like technically involved or makes up a part of your workday, I think the same. I think there's a lot of complexity there which we can't see from our 30,000 foot view. Even as like people in the technology space who understand some of the intricacies of that software. And the second point is that all that advantage of configurability accrues to the SaaS software as well. One of the biggest advantages we've had early on in kind of some of our internal features has been taking something which is like where we spent a really long time trying to make the onboarding process for some of the areas of Salesbricks, really kind of magical and straightforward.
Mhm. Mhm.
But a lot of that you can offload to an AI. You can have a conversation and describe. In fact, we have features in the pipeline where what ordinarily would be like a hair destroying like UX problem is mitigated entirely by like, hey, if you sit down with an agent, not even with a human
Mhm.
being, and describe how you want this to be set up, we can configure and write down in mathematical functions what you actually want instead of if then spaghetti, which is what 99% of the software ends up being. So I think the advantages accrue to SaaS in the same way that they do to agents, and the only thing that makes and the reason why I'm still bullish on SaaS software generally is that if you use a tool professionally and use it multiple times a day,
Mhm.
chances are, it's worth having a good one. That's how you do your job and what you need to do to get to earn your keep.
Awesome. So talking about good one, like good SaaS
Yeah.
products, right? So talk about where have you deployed AI and what have you been, what have been the wins within Salesbricks and what have been the learnings where it wasn't a good fit?
Yeah. So the main way we've deployed AI at the moment is through our assistant. So the name is Brick or Brick IQ, and the big wins we've been getting are being able to use authentication and security models that we unsurprisingly run a very tight ship because we have a huge amount of financial data. I think $55 million was the amount closed last quarter on Salesbricks. Like there's a lot of financial data that goes through Salesbricks, so we have a lot of security rules associated.
Mm.
We were able to take those rules, take those APIs, and essentially have an analyst that can run through all of the Salesbricks structured data, create custom reports, and answer questions which we didn't have any inkling of ahead of time. Some of the most fun was saying, okay, we're going to turn this on for you guys. Here's a little assistant you can get questions about your business. And the questions people would ask would be incredible. Like, hey, for my reps, like, how many of them are using like this specific like discount coupon, and how are people like spreading the ARR, or like spreading the entitlements across phases for customers in this income band. And then, how is this plan doing? How is this specific brick pricing on this plan compared to this plan, given a cost of goods sold of X? And they're asking these questions, which like we just didn't think of. But we didn't have to build any custom software to support this. We just had to have a really strong data model and like a really good relative, understanding of our space, and provide that information to the model. And the model was able to answer those questions for them, which for us was like super great. So like the benefits there are huge. The area where we initially had troubles, where it wasn't that great, was and we had to like make a bunch of tweaks and build a bunch of tools to get around this. If anytime you're viewing data and what have you, the LLM is more often than not quite happy to just spam out the information. So if you imagine a table of 50,000 entries, that many tokens is not great. It's not great to be sending that out. So in the end, we kind of have like bypassing solutions which end up kind of front running requests for data and parsing and formatting and what have you, and dealing with all of those problems and sending those directly to the reader, and then backfilling that information back into the context, so that when the LLM asks questions again subsequently, it's not going to have an issue. So anything to do with formatting was a bit of a pain.
Yeah, I mean that's
the
where
other thing. Yeah,
I was going to say that's why we need a framework where you can decide between throwing the problem at an LLM or throwing the problem at just a symbolic engine that does that.
exactly.
That balance is pretty natural even for humans. Sometimes we'll do things in our brain, sometimes we'll offload to a calculator on the side, right?
Yes.
AI behaves the same way. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and so that's been something which has been really fantastic. I think it's the I think in a scenario where maybe 5 years down the line, when we have these super incredible LLM based intelligences, or other whether it's diffusion models or what have you, and they have infinite context, they can do all this stuff in there very, very quickly from inference. This is a different matter. But right now, there are things that LLMs are very, very good at, and things that they are absolutely atrocious at. The things they are super atrocious at, they've gotten better in the last 2 or 3 years. But everything else, we've been able to build tools and workarounds, and that's been kind of fun from an engineering perspective. Someone who grew up in the 80s and then in the 90s, I remember when computers, they sucked, but they were amazing, and you just had to kind of work around and find the natural avenues where you could provide value. And even if it was something that was they were always good at doing like relatively straightforward integer math, and then you threw a floating point at them, and all of a sudden, it was horrible. That's just kind of the world we used to live in. And today, I think we'll look back in 10 years' time, and what we will end up doing is deleting a staggering amount of code, because over time, a lot of the actual code and the tools and what have you will be mitigated, or there'll be things that the LLM can just do without, it can just one-shot them, no problem. But the core understandings and the actual value and strongly structured data, and the workflows and the understandings around like what that actually means for a given company in any kind of tool sense, those are still super valuable. But yeah,
I have an interesting thought that came to me when you were saying, the sales team, that's incompressible. Have you seen companies thinking about selling to AI agents, not to humans?
Yes. So we actually have at least one company in who is a customer of ours, who has a slightly similar conceit. They perform, I think they call it GEO, generative search engine optimization, and it's a really interesting service. because it's essentially providing information to LLMs and which is essentially selling to the agents themselves. But I think there's an advantage to that in terms of surfacing information to human buyers. But I think there is a core disconnect in that, in stepping over into like selling directly to LLMs who are going to make purchasing decisions. I
Yeah.
kind of strongly believe that um, actually AI agents are going to have, on artificial intelligence generally has a bit of a limit in terms of what it can and can't be used for. Um, I'm not sure that it's going to work
So,
really
so
really
you're
well.
saying, LLMs won't have access to money to spend, or what?
It's more that I think human judgment is like, there are areas where it's absolutely necessary um, in
Yeah,
revenue
but for
operations.
example,
Yeah.
right, um, I have an OpenClaw bot running. Actually, I have multiple of them, and one of them I've one of them I've given $200. Like, hey, here's $200.
Nice.
Just just talk to other AI agents and spread the word. Now,
Right.
and I did not tell it how to use it, and now of course it can figure it. I'm just waiting to see what happens. It's only been 2 days. Um,
Do you think it's gonna Amazon use some RAM directly to your door?
no, I mean, I'm taking. See, it doesn't have access to any of our core infrastructure. It's completely outside,
Okay.
in a separate, isolated environment, and it has access to the public internet. But I have given it some budget in terms of the tokens it can use, and maybe it can do other people favor by doing research for them and all of that, so it can trade. Um, but I think I, I feel that if I have a hard, um, you know, the boundaries that I can provide on how much money can be spent, I'm willing to take some risks, especially in marketing. Like I can, hey, try it out, because marketing is also like, I might give it in Google Ads. Why don't I give it to an agent? And maybe this agent talks to other agents. Because yesterday my agent was talking to Andre Karpathy's agent. It's like, hey, how are you doing, kind of stuff, and trying to sneak its way in and spread the word. So
Yeah.
I feel that, of course, generative, AEO or GEO and all of that is meant
Yeah.
for an AI audience. Maybe there is a future where we are selling to AI agents, and AI agents would be a lot more fast at making decisions. And also, there's some customers talking to us, and it's like, we are doing procurement. Can we use AI to negotiate? Because what is negotiation? It's like, hey, this
Yeah.
guy is giving me this price. That I talked to that guy, and that guy is giving me 10% discount. Can you match the thing because I like you, right? So AI is so much better at doing all of these things. So if we are going into a world where AI is negotiating, and if you look at Salesbricks, and I'm also curious why you called it bricks, and are there multiple layers to
Mhm.
that? Is will there be a dramatic shift in your business? Do you think that there will be a dramatic business in the next coming 2 years, a dramatic shift there?
I think like ultimately every buying decision is it's a clear human decision. And my worry or my thought about the limitations of like how whether AI will have a big impact on that. I mean, it might be the case that actually like a bunch of people do send their AI bots out there with more than $200, and they're like, hey, buy access to an API that does this thing for us.
Hmm.
But I think that virtually any kind of decision making arena for human beings that is not strictly like quantitative, um, we have an astonishing amount of context uh, in that takes up. If you look at like neurolinguistic programming and stuff like that, we're taking in a lot more information than we're necessarily aware of. And certainly, if you have a Slack instance, which is a blizzard of information for pretty much anyone, that plus your awareness of what's going on in the world today, what how your team's doing in other things, I feel like even with all that context, we rarely make perfect decisions.
Hmm.
Um, and a big part of why I'm a little bit bearish on how AI agents will be used or how effective they'll be to make decisions is that we as a species, we rarely internalize like one of the most important rules in decision making is like disregarding outcome bias. Or resulting, if you, I think in thinking in bets, the idea that essentially we judge how good the decision was by the outcome. And if you look at it from a purely facile point of view, like of course that I bought this lottery ticket, I won $1,000. That was a good decision to go and buy that lottery ticket. But in reality, you have to understand the whole problem space. Like, okay, how many times should I have bought that lottery ticket? I mean, if I mortgage my house and sell my car and go to Vegas and put all the money on black, was that a good decision? Well, I can't judge it based on what the outcome is. Like, I may end up with like multiple millions of dollars, but in reality, that's a really reckless, terrible decision. But the way that we kind of optimize processes in the real world, in companies, the way that people like do this stuff is we 100% look at outcomes to determine whether a decision is good or not. And AI is extremely malleable, and I can't imagine a single company where people would say like, okay, this AI is the decision that the AI made on that specific advertising campaign, or selling that specific thing, or pricing something a certain way, that's going to be, here's the outcome. We also have like relatively small decisions, like actual result sets for any SaaS company. Like in reality, there's only so many sales deals you make on any given like quarter. I mean, how many go through or don't go through. You have a very, very small sample size. So combine like that outcome bias with the small sample size in most SaaS companies, not like Fang and what have you, but in most SaaS companies, I actually think humans will make significantly better decisions for a surprising amount of time.
Got it.
But yeah,
Awesome.
It's a little bit critical to how most people think about it, but yeah, I always am a little bit worried when we look at quite qualitative things and presume that A, the quantitative values are the most important, and B, that we're even necessarily considering the right values.
Awesome.
So yeah.
All right. So the verdict is humans will be in charge, and that's JL from Salesbricks. Thank you, JL, for your time, and to the viewers, thank you for your time as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, share the Logic of AI Magic to stay updated on the future episodes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Benny.